maybe a drone shot, and an onboard camera view as well. The driver sees heading up the ramp to the launch deck. It's the Falcon 9 rocket on its transfer director. Strong back. Let's take a left turn to drive over the rails. Push the transfer director. Goes out to the pad. Take a step here to those rails. Stop next to the fixed service structure. Expect the crew members to get out of their Tesla Model X's. They'll have a chance to take in the view of that Falcon 9 rocket, a brand new rocket with a factory fresh booster. The Crew Dragon spacecraft on top, known as Dragon Endeavour, is going for its 4th flight to space. They'll have a chance to take a bathroom break as well, and then they'll take the elevator up to the crew access arm, and they'll walk across that crew access arm to begin boarding the spacecraft.
Core on countdown, pad, we remain on schedule.
shot from the Pad 39A fixed service structure. You can see some of the SpaceX closeout crew members, or so-called ninjas, in their black coveralls, walking across the crew access arm. That's the pathway the 4 crew members will be taking in the next few minutes as they make their way into the spacecraft. 2 hours and 55 minutes now until liftoff. The Falcon 9 out on Pad 39A is not fueled at this time. That propellant loading won't begin until the final 35 minutes of the countdown. At that point, the crew members strapped into the will be closed, and the support team, the closeout crew, will be evacuated a safe distance from the pad before that propellant loading gets underway. Also, before the fueling starts, the launch escape system, consisting of the Super Draco thrusters, the high thrust engines that would propel the capsule away from the rocket in the event of an emergency on the pad or in flight. Those engines will be armed in case of any anomaly or problem or malfunction during the propellant loading process that would propel the capsule away from the rocket if there was such an event. Again, if you're just joining us and you haven't done so yet, please hit the thumbs up or the like button on our YouTube stream. That helps us gain a larger audience and get as many people watching our coverage as possible. We'd really appreciate that help. You can see 2 of the astronauts set to ride to orbit tonight. Looks like this slurred Woody Hoberg walking across the pad deck. They'll likely have a chance to get a look at the Falcon 9 rocket in the next few moments. Get a chance to take a look at their ride to space tonight. You have to do that leaned to see the full height of the Falcon 9 rocket. Of course, they're wearing their helmets, which obstruct some of their vision above their heads. This looks like mission specialist Sultan Aniyadi and Russian cosmonaut Andrei Bedyaev, both spaceflight rookies, will be making their first flights to space tonight. Getting a look at the Falcon 9 and a fist bump there as they make their way to the elevator to ride up to the 265-foot level of that service Commander Bowen, pilot Hoberg already have boarded an elevator to make their way up to the 265-foot level. And there's a look from the security helicopter camera showing Commander Steve Bowen, pilot Woody Hoberg there at the 265-foot level with the NASA worm logo there. They have a chance here to make some final phone calls to their families before taking their seats inside the Dragon's craft. So all 4 crew members now at the 265-foot level. And in the next few moments, we see to make their way across the crew access arm. And the first 2 crew members are now making their way across the crew access arm. On the right, Commander Steve Bowen of Massachusetts. On the left, pilot Woody Hoberg from Pittsburgh, Virginia. Bowen is a retired Navy captain. He's making his 4th flight to space. He's shuttle recently in 2011 and has logged 40 days in space on the previous mission space station, which were mainly focused on assembly and maintenance of the space station. Now he's launching on his first flight to perform scientific research on board the space station. Bowen has accomplished 7 spacewalks for a total spacewalking time of 11 minutes in his career. He was selected as a NASA astronaut in 2000 before becoming an Navy submarine officer. Now signing the NASA meatball logo in the background is Woody Hoberg on his first flight to space tonight. He was selected as part of NASA's 2017 before his selection as an astronaut. He was a professor and led a research unit at MIT. He has a PhD in computer science and electrical engineering from the University of California. They're being assisted now by the SpaceX closeout crew in overalls. and they will be helped into the spacecraft shortly. You saw Commander Steve Bowen there rip the name tags off of the closeout crew members' suits. That's becoming a tradition. We've seen that before. The crewers will take the name tags of their support crew members into space as sort of a keepsake or souvenir for them, help them along the journey.
Four on countdown, started. We remain on schedule.
Commander Steve Bowen is now entering that Dragon Endeavour spacecraft. He's the first crew member aboard, and pilot Woody Hoberg to the craft. And the other two crew members are now making their way across the crew access arm. Mission Specialist Sultan Al Niyadi of the United Arab Emirates and Russian cosmonaut Andrei Fedyaev are now in the white room at the end of the crew access arm, preparing to board the spacecraft. Both crew members also are spaceflight rookies, so this four-man crew consists of 3 first-time space flyers.
In Dragon SpaceX, we were actually able to complete that test without triggering the onboard alert, so you can ignore the preview.
SpaceX Dragon, seat 3, com check.
Got you loud and clear, Woody, how me?
I have you the same. Good morning, Arthur.
Good morning, and for your awareness, as promised, I am wearing the shirt.
I love it. That makes us so...
car seat 1, com check.
Loud and clear. Seat 1. How me?
Get us in.
This is Apple, com check.
Loud and clear. Seat.
Loud and clear for, thank you.
With all 4 crew members now inside the Dragon spacecraft on top of the Falcon 9, the closeout crew from SpaceX is making sure the astronauts and cosmonauts are all situated in their seats correctly. And ground teams, including the spacecraft communicator or core, crew operations responsible engineer at SpaceX Mission Control out in California, will be performing voice checks with each of the 4 crew members. The crew members will also conduct communications checks with the Launch Control Center here at Kennedy Space Center.
Dragon, crew is ready for comm checks.
Space for double quick.
Now those voice checks I talked about a moment ago will be starting soon. They'll be talking to the crew operations responsible engineer, as well as the mission director and other members of the launch team here in Florida.
S1 is 2, comm check. Commander, have you loud and clear?
And Commander, you loud and clear as well.
SpaceX pilot, we had you loud and clear.
Pilot loud and clear.
SpaceX MS1 comm check.
MS1 loud and clear.
This is MS2. Are we ready?
MS clear. Umbilical comm check complete. Report when ready for seat rotation.
And SpaceX Dragon, crew is ready for seat rotation.
SpaceX copies Dragon. Will report when initiating. Initiating seat rotation.
See, the seats are rotating into their launch configuration. These seats all rotate in unison. They're kind of in a forward orientation to assist with the boarding process of astronauts after a splashdown at the end of their mission, currently expected in late August. These seats will again rotate to that forward orientation to enable the crew to exit the spacecraft.
Dragon SpaceX seats in the launch position.
SpaceX Dragon copies.
Down below the seats is a cargo pallet area. Effects as well as some logistics items are stowed for launch.
Dragon SpaceX, you are go for Section 2 suit leak check preparation.
Section 2 suit leak check preparation and work. SpaceX Dragon 10.
SpaceX copies. You are go for Section 3, suit leak check.
Suit check in work. SpaceX Dragon nominal suit leak checks for all suits.
SpaceX copies and concurs good suit leak checks. Closeout team will now perform final closeout steps and exit capsule. Proceed to Section 4 for side hatch closure when ready to close side hatch. Also, stand by for ground station comm checks.
For side hatch closure, and we'll report when we're ready for side hatch closure. And SpaceX Dragon crew is ready for side hatch closure.
Please.
That exchange between the Crew 6 astronaut, the crew operations responsible engineer and mission control in California, indicated that the least space each of the astronauts are wearing was satisfactory. And now the team will inspect out that crew side hatch before closing it for flight. Once the hatch is closed, they'll move into the next step of the check of the entire crew dragging cabin, the pressurized compartment, to make sure there are no craft.
In space, team is taking final steps in preparation to close the side hatch. Stand by for transition to pad hatch closed. Ensure all arms remain there. Now,
SpaceX Dragon copies.
Dragon SpaceX. Just an update. Pictures on the ground, but we're stepping into side hatch closure now. Again, stand by, and following side hatch closure, we will step into
SpaceX Dragon copies.
We're standing by the closed hatch on the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft. The SpaceX inside the white room clears some inspections and reviews, and there goes the hatch. It's being closed for flight. Once the hatch is closed and latched, the technicians will perform leak checks. They'll actually ramp up pressure inside the spacecraft and make sure there's no leakage out into the ambient pressure of the Earth's atmosphere. That's a check to ensure that the cabin is pressure sealed for the flight to space. This hatch closure occurring a little bit ahead of schedule. Hours and 6 minutes until launch time.
Dragon SpaceX. Comcheck over ground station.
And SpaceX Dragon, have you line clear over the ground station.
Core loud and clear. Ground station complete. Comchecks. SpaceX.
And SpaceX Dragon, have you loud and clear.
Core loud and clear. Teeters Comcheck complete. Stand by for Comchecks with DC, MD, LD in the launch configuration.
Dragon DC on countdown 1, Comcheck.
And DC Dragon, have you loud and clear on countdown 1.
DC loud and clear. Stand by for com checks with that.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1, com check.
MD Dragon, have you loud and clear on countdown 1.
MD loud and clear, stand by for com check over Dragon to ground. Dragon, MD on Dragon to ground, com check.
MD Dragon, have you loud and clear over Dragon to ground.
MD loud and clear, stand by for com checks with LD.
Dragon, countdown check.
LD Dragon, have you loud and clear on countdown 1.
LD, loud and clear. Stand by for com check over Dragon. Dragon, LD on Dragon to ground, com check.
LD Dragon, have you loud and clear over Dragon to ground.
LD, loud and clear.
Dragon SpaceX, with that, launch configuration com checks are now complete.
SpaceX Dragon, copy.
Dragon SpaceX, we are going to commence health checks for the launch escape system. Expect momentary flight computer state change, followed by a transition back to pad hatch closed.
SpaceX Dragon, we'll be watching, thanks.
You can see a view of one of NASA's security helicopters continuing to sweep the area around Launch Complex 39A. SpaceX's countdown is approaching the T-minus 2-hour mark. Just to recap where the team is right now in countdown preps, the hatch on the Crew Dragon spacecraft has been closed for flight. Leak checks are underway on the capsule. All 4 crew members are in their seats inside the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft, and we're not aware of any issues that are being worked right now by SpaceX teams as the countdown approaches that T-minus 2-hour mark until liftoff at 1:45 a.m. Eastern Time, 6:45 a.m. UTC from here at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This mission is known as Crew 6. It's the 6th fully operational crew rotation flight to the International Space Station that SpaceX will have launched, and the 9th SpaceX human mission overall. These 4 crew members that you see here in their seats are heading to the ISS for a 6th expedition. They're scheduled to return to Earth right now in late August. That could be adjusted based on changes or weather at the end of the mission. They're replacing the Crew 5 astronauts who it's October. After a few days of handover, the crew will be departing the space station and returning to Earth for splashdown off the coast of Florida no earlier than March the 6th.
Dragon, SpaceX, good side hatch leak check.
SpaceX Dragon, that's good.
Concur with that, Steve. And we also have a post ingress bring.
We are ready to copy the post-ingress brief.
Right. We have no updates on weather from the previous briefing, and Dragon and Falcon are tracking no issue launch here. The NASA team, for your awareness, is tracking a possible conjunction for ISS in about 22 hours and is considering performing a PDAM if required. We are still go for launch, regardless of if the PDAM will be required. If we do take that avoid maneuver, or if I take that avoidance maneuver, they may attempt to perform it prior to the Dragon boost burn, which helps to minimize impacts to our rendezvous time. After launch with more information as the joint teams evaluate if the PDAM is required, as well as if there are any updates to your mission timeline. I'll copy.
And SpaceX Dragon, we copy all. Thank you for the heads up on the PDAM, and we'll be waiting for those words after we get to over.
That's a good read back, Dragon, and at this time we'll step into contact with Falcon 9 operators. Please report when you're ready.
SpaceX Dragon, we're ready for contact with the Falcon 9 operators.
This is CE on countdown 1, initiating RA comm checks. GNC is first.
Dragon, GNC on countdown 1, comm.
And GNC Dragon, have you loud and clear on countdown 1.
GNC comm check by the propulsion engineer.
Dragon, prop on countdown 1, comm check.
Dragon, have you loud and clear on countdown 1.
Prop, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check, the engineer.
Dragon avionics on countdown 1, comm check.
Avionics Dragon, have you loud and clear on countdown 1.
Avionics loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the ground segment engineer.
Dragon on countdown 1, comm check.
And ground Dragon, have you loud and clear on countdown 1.
Ground segment clear. Stand by for comm check by launch control.
Dragon, launch control on countdown 1.
Launch control Dragon, have you loud and clear on countdown 1.
Launch control, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the chief engineer.
Dragon, CE on countdown 1, comm check.
CE, loud and clear on countdown 1.
CE, loud and clear. This completes the F9 responsible engineer comm checks.
T-minus 1 hour 50 minutes from liftoff. A few moments ago, we heard an exchange from the SpaceX Mission Control Center out in Hawthorne, California, and the Crew 6 astronauts on board SpaceX's Dragon Endeavour spacecraft. First of all, the Mission Control team told the crew that the leak checks on the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft are complete and satisfactory, so that's for tonight. They also told the crew about a possible conjunction or close approach between a piece of space debris and the International Space Station that is expected to occur in the next 22 hours, or later on Monday after the launch, but before the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft would dock with the space. NASA mission controllers are considering whether to perform a debris avoidance maneuver with the space station to get out of that piece of space junk. That could impact the rendezvous profile of the Dragon spacecraft, but they're going to work to as if they can. However, this is not a constraint for launch tonight, and the launch can go forward whether the NASA team decides to go ahead or forego the debris avoidance maneuver on the International Space Station. Just something that the astronauts will keep in mind, because some of the times for the rendezvous may be adjusted slightly depending on whether that debris avoidance maneuver is necessary. That will that would slightly change the space station's orbit and slightly alter the trajectory of the Dragon spacecraft as it needs to rendezvous and dock with the space station. If the launch occurs tonight, docking at the International Space Station currently scheduled for 2:38 a.m. Eastern Time, 7:38 a.m. UTC on Tuesday, a little more than 24 hours after launch. Inside the room now, out at pad 39A, you can see the SpaceX closeout crew performing the final inspections of the spacecraft. They're also secured inside that white room. They'll be taking a lot of that equipment with them down the elevator as they evacuate the pad in the next few minutes. 42 minutes, 38 seconds until liftoff of the Crew 6 mission. All 4 crew members appear to be resting comfortably inside the spacecraft. They can work with while they wait for launch. Commander Bowen, pilot Hoberg in the middle have the displays, the crew cockpit displays right in front of them as well to monitor all the systems they'll need to watch during the countdown and the climb. This morning, it's just past midnight here in Florida. Liftoff remains scheduled for 1:45 a.m. Eastern Time.
Dragon SpaceX, closeout team has departed the crew arm.
SpaceX Dragon copies.
The countdown is now inside of 1 hour, 37 minutes until liftoff. And SpaceX Launch Control has just confirmed that the closeout crew has departed the White Room and the crew access arm and is now in the process of evacuating the launch pad. They'll move a few miles away to a fallback position that's safely away from the launch pad area ahead of the start of propellant loading on the Falcon 9, which is due to begin in about 1 hour. That's when the hazardous operations will get underway of a loading of kerosene and liquid oxygen into the vehicle. That takes about 30 minutes, and at T-minus 2 minutes is when the Falcon 9 should be fully loaded with propellant and then ready for launch. And now the SpaceX closeout team is now evacuating the pad. You can see the vehicles now driving away, two of them, and a couple of more vehicles now departing the pad deck, the Teslas that the astronauts rode out to the pad in. So these teams will be moving a few miles away as SpaceX prepares to start loading propellants into the Falcon 9 at T-minus 35 minutes. T-minus 1 hour, 11 minutes, 42 seconds. This is a rather quiet period in the countdown, as is typical at this time. So the crew members are all aboard the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft out on top of the Falcon 9 rocket tonight. And the support team, the closeout team of SpaceX technicians have evacuated the launch pad. We saw that a few minutes ago. And now the launch team is just watching their systems. There will be a poll in the next 20 to 30 minutes or so of the launch team for a go or no-go to proceed into propellant loading and launch. If all systems are go, the crew access arm will be retracted from the Dragon spacecraft in about a half hour from now, leading up to the arming of the crew escape system, the launch escape system on the Crew Dragon spacecraft. And once that is complete, the propellant loading will begin at T-minus 35 minutes. Here's a view from the Kennedy Space Center press site from our location where we're covering the launch 3 miles away from Pad 39A. You can see some of the news media and photographers gathering on the press site lawn for the launch 1 hour, 10 minutes from now at 1:45 a.m. Eastern Time, 6:45 a.m. UTC. Weather conditions appear to be very favorable for launch tonight. The forecast coming into the countdown called for a 95% chance of favorable weather. As you can see from the flagpole there, the winds are light tonight. Skies are mostly clear. And the downrange weather in the abort zones where the Crew Dragon spacecraft would potentially splash down if there had to be an in-flight escape maneuver. Going into tonight's countdown, there was just a low risk of those conditions, those wind and sea conditions being unfavorable as well. All that is currently being discussed by the NASA and SpaceX managers here at Kennedy Space Center. Right now, we're not aware of any issues, weather or technical, that would prevent an on-time launch tonight. Here's a nice shot from one of the cameras out on the eastern edge of Pad 39A, looking back toward the west. You can see the setting moon approaching the western horizon now. Nice view there of the moon over the Falcon 9 rocket. Again, as I mentioned, skies are clear. Weather conditions appear favorable for liftoff tonight. If you want to support our coverage, one way to do that is to go to our Spaceflight Now store. You can go there at shop.spaceflightnow.com, the website there on our live stream. There we have 6 mission patch for sale, among other items. You can see the mission patch for this mission. They are designed by the crew members with their names, Steve Bowen, Warren, Woody Hoberg, Sultan Al-Niyadi, and Russian cosmonaut Andrei Fedyaev in their native languages there on the mission patch. Again, this is the Crew 6 mission patch for these 4 crew members heading up to the International Space Station. You can purchase it in our Spaceflight Now store at shop.spaceflightnow.com. We also want to thank those of you who have been contributing in the Super Chat here on our YouTube stream. A big thank you to Astro and Stephanie B for their contributions. You can support our coverage by donating to us in the Super Chat. This helps us continue to maintain our coverage and expand our coverage for launch activity here on Florida Space Coast. We really appreciate that. We also thank those of you who have become members, have joined our YouTube channel. Thank you to Rocket Profit for becoming a pad leader on our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking the join button underneath our live stream here. We have different membership levels available for you to choose from. And depending on which membership tier you choose, you can gain access to members only bonus video features and video. So if you can support our coverage in any way, becoming a member or in the Super Chat or going to our Spaceflight Now store at spaceflightnow.com, we'd really appreciate that support.
Dragon SpaceX, cycling orbit tank isolation valves to equalize low flow pressure.
SpaceX Dragon copies.
Dragon SpaceX, you are go for section 5 of 4.100. When ready, report go for launch.
Hey, we copy. We're picking up in 5.1 of 4.100.
SpaceX's countdown just passed T-minus 60 minutes, so now less than 1 hour to go until liftoff tonight. That remains set for 1:45 a.m. Eastern Time, 6:45 a.m. UTC, from here at Kennedy Space Center at Launch Complex 39A. We're standing by for the final go for launch from the crew on board the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft. They're going through their final configurations in the cockpit right now, and we expect to hear Commander Steve Bowen radio SpaceX Mission Control that the crew is ready for launch in the next few moments. The next major milestone will be the poll of the launch team over the next 15 minutes or so for their go or no-go to proceed into the propellant loading process, and then the propellant loading will begin at T-minus 35 minutes.
And SpaceX Dragon, we are go for launch.
SpaceX copies, crews go.
T-minus 55 minutes, 40 seconds. We're going to introduce you now to the crew members that you saw. If you were joining us earlier in our coverage, you saw them board the Dragon spacecraft. They're now in their seats. Commander is Steve Bowen. He's 59 years old. He's a native of Massachusetts. Before his selection as a NASA astronaut in 2000, Bowen was a submarine officer. He's now a retired Navy captain. He's flown on 3 space missions to date, all on the space shuttle, STS-126, STS-132, and most recently the final flight of Space Shuttle Discovery, STS-133, in February of 2011. On those missions, he's logged 40 days in space, but this will be his first long-duration space flight, going to orbit for 6 months to live and work aboard the International Space Station. All 3 of his previous missions visited the ISS for short-duration flights, mainly focused on assembly and maintenance of the complex. Bowen is, again, is a retired U.S. Navy captain, was a submarine officer before his selection as a NASA astronaut. Sitting to his side inside the Crew Dragon spacecraft in the pilot's seat is Warren Woody Hoberg. He is the pilot for this mission, age 37, born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He earned a PhD in computer science and electrical engineering from the University of California at Berkeley. Before his selection as a NASA astronaut in 2017, Hoberg was a Boeing engineer for a time, and at the time of his selection as an astronaut, he was a professor and head of a research unit at MIT. This will be his first flight to space. Mission Specialist number 1 is Sultan Al Nayati from the United Arab Emirates. He's 41 years old, the father of 6. He's studied at Brighton University in the UK, Zayed Military College in the UAE, and holds a master's degree and a PhD from Griffith University in Australia. Before his selection as a UAE astronaut, he served in the UAE Armed Forces as a communications engineer. He's in the first class of astronauts selected by the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center in Dubai. And again, this will be his first flight to space. This will be the first long-duration flight aboard the space station by an astronaut from the Arab world. This flight was actually arranged with NASA through the company Axiom Space, which provided NASA with a seat that company had purchased on a Russian Soyuz spacecraft a couple of years ago. And in exchange for that, NASA is providing Axiom a seat on Crew 6 for a long-duration flight to the space station, and UAE, the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, is in turn a customer of Axiom for this mission. And rounding out the crew, mission specialist number 2, Andrei Fedyaev from Roscosmos, the Russian space agency. He's also 41 years old. He was a Russian Air Force pilot before becoming a cosmonaut back in 2012. He's the second Russian cosmonaut to fly to the space station on a SpaceX crew capsule through an agreement between NASA and the Russian Space Agency. And like Hoberg, Al-Nayati, this is also Fedyaev's first flight to space. So this 4-man crew, led by a veteran commander with 3 flights under his belt, and then he's accompanied by these 3 spaceflight rookies. Very nice view here of the moon setting behind the fixed service structure at Pad 39A. Beautiful shot here as the countdown is now 51 minutes, 40 seconds from liftoff.
control is complete and the team is ready for crew access arm retract, propellant load, and launch. Both control rooms will go into lockdown at T-minus 45 minutes and remain in that state until the launch escape system is disarmed. All operators are to remain in their console and maintain a sterile cockpit until MD confirms successful disarming of the launch escape system following orbit insertion or propellant offload in the event of a scrub. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or the LD, and they'll approve aborting the launch countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch out of sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort sequence. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands off, relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count. Operators advise the launch director whether structural breakup is imminent or occurring for Dragon manual escape flight rules. Launch control, you may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Proceeding with crew arm movement. Crew access arm retraction has started.
You see the crew access arm swinging away from the Falcon 9 rocket and the Crew Dragon spacecraft. Once the crew access arm is safely away in its launch position, the Dragon escape system will be armed. That's the launch abort propulsion system that would push the Dragon spacecraft away from the Falcon 9 vehicle in the event of an emergency on the pad or in flight. Spectacular view here of Moonset on Florida Space Coast as the crew access arm continues retracting.
Crew access armor traction complete.
Dragon, SpaceX, you are go for Section 6. Close visors and arm launch escape system.
All right, section 6 is in work.
The Crew 6 astronauts
SpaceX Dragon visors are closed.
are now closing their visors in preparation for launch this morning at 1:45 a.m. Eastern Time. The next step will be the arming of the launch escape system.
And SpaceX Dragon arming and launch escape system.
SpaceX copies.
Launch escape system is verified armed.
SpaceX Launch Control confirms the launch escape system is now armed. So the 8 Super Draco high thrust engines around the circumference of the Crew Dragon spacecraft are armed and ready for an abort if necessary. This is the safety system that would propel the crew and the capsule away from the rocket in the event of any anomaly or major malfunction during the final 35 minutes of the countdown or in flight. These Super Draco thrusters burn high pressure propellant, hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide, hypergolics, that ignite on contact with one another. Now you're hearing some of the tanks out of the pad venting in preparation for the start of the propellant loading in less than 2 minutes. If you're just joining us, you're just in time for the start of propellant loading on the Falcon 9 rocket for the Crew 6 mission, set to deliver 4 astronauts and a Russian cosmonaut, a total crew of 4 to the International Space Station. If you haven't done so yet, please hit the thumbs up or the like button here on our YouTube stream. That helps us get as many people watching our coverage as possible. So if you want to help us, one easy way to do that is to hit the thumbs up or the like button on our stream. We really would appreciate that. We're standing by for the start of propellant loading in less than 40 seconds.
Propellant load has started.
And now propellant loading is officially underway. At this point, the countdown is being controlled now by a ground computer. So this is the final 35-minute automated countdown sequence. The propellant loading begins with the flow of kerosene fuel into both stages of the Falcon 9. Liquid oxygen loading on the first stage is also beginning now. The upper stage oxidizer tank won't be loaded until the final 16 minutes of the countdown. The Falcon 9 out on pad 39A is a brand new vehicle. The upper stage, as it is with all Falcon 9s, is new. It's the only major part that's not reusable. Down below, the first stage is also a brand new vehicle going for its first flight to space. It's booster 1078 in SpaceX's inventory. And booster 1078, after tonight's launch, will target a landing on the drone ship, one of SpaceX's recovery vessels, northeast of the Cape in the Atlantic Ocean. The drone ship being targeted this morning is just read the instructions. It's a football field-sized platform holding position east of Charleston, South Carolina. Minutes, 31 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. You're seeing some of the first signs of vapor around the bottom of the liquid oxygen tank on the first stage of the Falcon 9. This is caused by the loading of the super cold oxidizer, chilled down to several hundred degrees below zero, close to oxygen's freezing point. The liquid oxygen tank begins about a third of the way up the length of that first stage booster. Below that condensation line where the vapors are visible is the
Stage
kerosene
1
tank.
cryohelium loading has started.
The kerosene tank at the very bottom of the vehicle. Above that, the liquid oxygen tank. We heard a call just a second ago from SpaceX Launch Control that cryogenic helium is now being loaded into the Falcon 9. This is the pressurant that's used to maintain pressure inside the propellant tanks. Some of that helium is forced into the propellant tanks as propellants are consumed in flight to maintain the proper pressures inside the vehicle. T-minus 30 minutes and counting. The 4 crew members inside the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft at the top of the 215-foot tall Falcon 9 our monitoring systems, but they're basically along for the ride at this point. This is a fully automated countdown sequence. A ground computer is controlling the countdown at this point. At T-minus 1 minute, the control of the countdown will be handed off from the ground computer to the Falcon 9's onboard computer. Here's a look inside of firing room 4 of the Launch Control Center here at Kennedy Space Center. That's where the launch team is gathered this morning for this countdown. SpaceX and NASA engineers are in that facility. That's about 3 miles away from pad 39A. If you look closely in this view, off to the right of the Falcon 9 is the under construction Starship launch facility here at Kennedy Space Center. SpaceX began construction of that facility more than a year ago now to ready this Pad 39A area to support future launches of the company's Super Heavy booster and Starship rocket. The first launch of SpaceX's fully reusable Starship launch vehicle is expected in the coming weeks, potentially from South Texas, but future operational flights of the Starship, likely including launches to support NASA's Artemis moon program, will originate from here at Pad 39A in Florida. T-minus 28 minutes and counting. If you're wondering what some of the hissing noise is in the background, we're getting some audio from cameras, from microphones rather, out at Launch Pad 39A. So you're hearing some of the sounds you would hear if you were at the pad at this time as the Falcon 9 is loaded with propellants. 26 minutes, 25 seconds to go right now. So right now the first stage is being loaded with both kerosene and liquid oxygen. The upper stage being loaded with kerosene fuel and cryogenic helium pressurant also being loaded into the vehicle at this time. Again, this will start if the launch happens as scheduled at 1:45 a.m. Eastern Time. It'll start roughly a 25-hour chase of the International Space Station, culminating in a docking around 2:38 a.m. Eastern Time, 7:38 a.m. UTC on Tuesday, to deliver this fresh 4-man crew to the orbiting outpost.
Stage 2 cryo-helium loading has started.
And we just heard a call that the helium pressurant is now being loaded into the composite overwrapped pressure vessels inside the second stage of the Falcon 9. We heard a call a few minutes ago that cryo-helium loading had begun. That we think was on the first stage, the upper stage now receiving its helium supply. T-minus 25 minutes until the launch of Crew 6. now inside of 22 minutes until launch. If you want to support our coverage, one way to do that is to go to our Spaceflight Now store at shop.spaceflightnow.com. You see the website there on your screen. There we have the Crew 6 mission patch, the patch for this mission for sale, as well as other items. This patch has the names of the crew members, Steve Bowen, Woody Hoberg, and Sultan Al-Niyadi and Andrei Fedyaev in their native languages around the upper portion of that patch. Also in this patch, the Roman numeral 6 for this Crew 6 launch, as well as renderings of the Crew Dragon spacecraft and a Dragon. Hence, that's what the Dragon spacecraft is named after, of course, as well as the International Space Station, their destination for this mission. This launch at 1:45 a.m. Eastern Time will begin a 25-hour pursuit of the space station, culminating in a docking early Tuesday. Also, if you're just joining our coverage, if you haven't done so yet, we'll appeal one more time to please hit the like button or the thumbs up button here on our YouTube stream. That helps us gain a larger audience for our coverage. We know it's the middle of the night, but we want to bring, for those of you in the U.S. at least, middle of the night, but we want to bring this launch to as many people as possible. And we thank you for tuning in. We're now seeing the big vent from the Strongback out at pad 39A. This is part of the purge and chill down procedure of the liquid oxygen loading line. It's part of the steps to prepare for loading of the cryogenic oxidizer into the upper stage.
Stage 2, RP1 load complete.
And we just heard the call that the second stage RP1 is complete. That means that the second stage kerosene fuel tank is now fully loaded. Loading of both propellants on the first stage continues at this time. And again, this chill down purge sequence is now underway for loading of liquid oxygen on the upper stage to begin in a few minutes' time. The RP1 for Rocket 1, it's a highly refined rocket grade kerosene. Here's a great aerial shot from the helicopter showing that big vent from a rare sight to see this from an aerial vantage point. 19 minutes, 20 seconds to go. 16 minutes, 30 seconds from liftoff. That big vent is now
Start at
terminating.
stage 2 lock float.
And just as expected, there's the call for the start of liquid oxygen loading on the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. Off in the background on the upper right, there appears to be a ship just offshore, off to the east of pad 39A. Not sure what this vessel is. It's hard to see at night, but it is moving south and moving away from the launch corridor of the Falcon 9, which will be heading off to the northeast to take aim on the International Space Station. We haven't heard anything official that there is a concern with any shipping traffic in the restricted waters. And the countdown is continuing inside of 16 minutes now until liftoff. T-minus 14 minutes, 34 seconds and counting as SpaceX counts down to the liftoff of the Crew 6 mission at 1:45 a.m. Eastern Time. This is actually the first of 3 Falcon 9 rocket missions SpaceX currently is planning today. Later this afternoon, we're expecting back-to-back launch attempts here in Florida and in California for 2 more Falcon 9 rockets, each carrying a batch of Starlink internet satellites to orbit. Here's a shot of Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station taken this afternoon by Bill Harwood from CBS News, showing the Falcon 9 rocket vertical for the Starlink 6-1 mission set for launch later this afternoon at 1:38 p.m. Eastern Time, about 12 hours after this Crew 6 launch. That'll be carrying a batch of second-generation Starlink internet satellites into orbit. And then less than an hour after that, SpaceX is targeting another Falcon 9 launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. That will be delivering another batch of 51 first-generation Starlink satellites into orbit. So SpaceX is currently bridging the first and second generations of the Starlink internet network, and 72 Starlink satellites in total launching on these 2 Falcon 9 rockets this afternoon. Back to Crew 6, though, we're expecting the launch right now still scheduled for 1:45 a.m. Eastern Time. The Falcon 9 rocket will be delivering the Dragon spacecraft into a low-altitude parking orbit about 9 minutes after liftoff, and then about 12 minutes after launch at 1:57 a.m. Eastern Time. We expect to see the deployment of the Dragon spacecraft with the 4 crew members on board to begin its flight to the International Space Station, culminating in an automated docking to the space station at 2:38 a.m. Eastern Time, 7:38 a.m. UTC on Tuesday, about 25 hours after the launch. Here's a look at the flight corridor for this morning's Crew 6 climb to space. The Falcon 9 will be heading to the northeast from Kennedy Space Center. This map shows some of the abort corridors, or abort zones for the Falcon 9 rocket, or the Crew Dragon spacecraft, rather, in the event of a failure of the Falcon 9 in flight. The green corridor here shows some of the zones where the Crew Dragon spacecraft could splash down in the Atlantic Ocean if necessary, if it has to propel itself off of the Falcon 9 launch vehicle. The red area is the Dragon abort exclusion zone. That's where the spacecraft is programmed not to splash down in the event of a failure that would result in a splashdown in that area, the Dragon spacecraft will be commanded automatically to propel itself either back toward Newfoundland or propel itself further downrange toward the Irish coast for a splashdown closer to recovery forces. So this is a northeasterly course, as are all missions to the International Space Station. The drone jet first landing is positioned east of the Carolinas, about a few hundred miles, about 400 miles northeast of Kennedy Space Center. Now 11 minutes and 12 seconds until liftoff. You can see more frost and more vapors building up around the first stage, and now seeing some of that building up on the second stage as liquid oxygen flows into both stages now. A quiet countdown so far this morning. No issues of any note have been reported by SpaceX Launch Control. In the next few moments, the crew members should confirm that their cockpit displays are configured for launch. T-minus 10 minutes and counting.
Dragon, SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX Dragon crew displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX copies. On behalf of our entire team at SpaceX, we are honored to have you aboard Dragon Capsule Endeavour today for its next trip to the International Space Station. We wish you a great mission, good luck, Godspeed, and enjoy the ride.
Thank you very much for those kind words. We'd like to thank all the trainers, technicians, engineers, decision makers, and planners who have defined our mission ahead and trained us and given the faith in us to execute that mission. And Crew 6 is ready to launch.
Engine chill.
T-minus 7 minutes and counting. engine chill down is now underway on the Falcon 9 rocket. This involves flowing small amounts of liquid oxygen, the super cold oxidizer, through the engine plumbing at the bottom of the booster. That protects the engine hardware from potential damage from thermal shock during the startup sequence. 6 minutes, 30 seconds to go now. This time, the Falcon 9's navigation system should be configured for flight. The
Stage 1, RP1 load complete.
The Falcon 9's autonomous flight safety system, range safety system, should also be undergoing final checks to make sure it's ready for launch. We just heard the call also that the RP1 or kerosene load on the first stage is complete. So both stages of the Falcon 9 have been fully fueled for launch this morning. Loading of oxidizer into both stages continues for a few more minutes. 5 minutes, 47 seconds until liftoff now.
Dragon, SpaceX, for awareness, T-tab load issue and our troubleshooting. We are currently still go, but have further evaluation before making a final decision. We'll get you a final read before T0.
And SpaceX Dragon comes.
SpaceX Launch Control reports they're evaluating a potential issue with the T-tab system. That's the triethyl aluminum, triethyl borane, igniter fluid.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count.
It's an igniter fluid, essentially, that
Thanks for pressurizing for strong back retrack.
the Falcon 9's Merlin engines. Right now, teams are still go for launch, but they're evaluating issue this couple of minutes. Dragon spacecraft is now transitioning to internal power. And the next step will be the retraction of the strong back from the Falcon 9 rocket.
Strong back is retracting.
Three and a half minutes until launch. No update on that T-tab ignition system call that we heard from SpaceX Launch Control a couple of minutes ago. But at that time, teams were still go for launch. Countdown is continuing. The strong back has begun its retraction and is nearing its retracted point about 1.5 degrees from the Falcon 9 rocket.
Stage 1 lock flow complete.
And the first stage liquid oxygen tank is now fully loaded. Loading of liquid oxygen on the upper stage continues for a few more seconds. That should be terminated before the T-minus 2 minute mark.
Dragon is in terminal count and on internal power.
We've heard confirmation now that the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour spacecraft with its 4 crew members on board is on internal power at this time. T-minus 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
On countdown 1, hold, hold, hold. We are standing down due to a T-tab ground issue.
And there's the call from SpaceX launch director here in firing room 4 at Kennedy
Launch
Space
report
Center.
has started.
That the countdown has been terminated at T-minus 2 minutes, 17 seconds, according to the clock here at Kennedy Space Center. So the launch will not
Dragon
be happening
SpaceX with that call from LD.
today.
You are go to step into 5.100 launch scrub.
5.100 launch scrub. That didn't work.
The SpaceX's teams are backing on. This is actually the first time a technical issue has scrubbed a Falcon 9 countdown with the crew on board. There has been at least one scrub due to weather that I can remember in my time covering these missions. Also a rarity overall for any to get scrubbed after propellant loading due to a technical issue. Just one or two times that this has happened over the last 2+ years. The issue is with the TTAB system. That's the triethyl aluminum triethyl borane igniter system for the Falcon 9's Merlin engines. This is a ground system issue according to the SpaceX launch director.
And Dragon, LD on countdown 1. At this time, our offloads are underway. Vehicle is safe and proceeding nominally with offload. Expecting about a 50-minute offload.
SpaceX Dragon copy. It's about a 50-minute offload. We'll be sitting here waiting. Thanks.
hearing some noises from pad 39A as tanks are vented and propellants are being drained now from the Falcon 9 rocket after this morning's scrub. The scrub again was called at about T-minus 2 minutes, 18 seconds or so due to an issue, a ground issue with the TTEP system. That's the triethyl aluminum, triethyl borane system that's used to ignite the Falcon 9's main engines at T-minus 3 seconds. That fluid mixture has a distinctive green flash when it's ignited in the engine bay area at the bottom of the first stage. If you've watched launches before, sometimes you can see that if it's a night with good visibility. These vents are normal as a normal part of the safing and propellant draining process. The SpaceX launch team told the crew that this draining is expected to take about 50 minutes, and at that point, the support team, the closeout crew, will be sent back out to pad 39A to assist the Crew 6 astronauts out of the spacecraft. They'll return to crew quarters for a bit of rest, and then they'll await word, as will we, on when the next launch attempt can be made for this Crew 6 mission. SpaceX has a backup opportunity reserved Tuesday morning, 24 hours from now. But of course, that will be pending the outcome of the investigation and any corrective actions that need to be instituted for this issue that caused this morning's scrub.
Dragon SpaceX with a propellant offload update.
SpaceX Dragon, go ahead.
Offloads are proceeding nominally, anticipating another half hour until closeout.
Understand, looking about a half hour to close that. We copy, thank you.
Here's a look inside the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft where the 4 crew members, 2 NASA astronaut UAE, and on the left is Russian cosmonaut Andrei Fedyaev, waiting on the Falcon 9 rocket underneath them. They still have their helmet visors closed until that propellant drain is safe. And then the Dragon escape system at that point will be disarmed. And the closed team, SpaceX, will be cleared to proceed back to the pad to help these crew members out of their seats and then drive them back to crew quarters here at Kennedy Space Center to wait out another launch attempt, or wait for another launch attempt. SpaceX has a backup opportunity booked on the Eastern Range for 1:22 a.m., 6:22 a.m. UTC tomorrow, about 24 hours from now. But of course, managers will assess the cause for this abort or this scrubbed countdown this morning before determining whether to proceed that launch tomorrow. Following that, the next launch attempt would be on Thursday, March the 2nd. NASA and SpaceX officials are planning to host a press conference here at Kennedy Space Center at 8:30 a.m. UTC, about an hour and a half from now. So we hope to gain some more information on, as well as the path forward at that briefing.
Dragon SpaceX with a propellant offload update.
SpaceX Dragon, go ahead.
Our stage 2 LOX tank is offloaded, tracking about another 25 to 30 minutes here. Last estimate may have been a little low.
SpaceX Dragon copies. Thank you for the update.